what you need to know about housing during COVID-19, plus a discussion with Jim Murren, chair of Nevada's COVID-19 task force. That's today on Nevada Week.
Support for Nevada Week is provided by Senator William H. Hernstat, Cashman Equipment, and additional supporting sponsors.
It's been 4 weeks since Governor Steve Sisolak ordered all non-essential businesses to shut down. Since then, hundreds of thousands of Nevadans have filed for unemployment. To help soften the blow, federal and local governments have approved relief packages, and Governor Sisolak has put a moratorium on evictions. We will discuss what you need to know now, plus when the moratorium ends, with housing and legal experts. But first, Jim Murren is the chair of the Nevada COVID-19 task force. We sat down with him to get a deeper understanding of the state's efforts. Well, we have Jim Murren here on the show. Jim, for one thing, thank you so much for being here and taking the time to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
So I wanted to start just with the Response Relief and Recovery Task Force. The main focuses of the task force as they are right now is to reduce pressure on our medical capacity, provide the personal protection equipment to our health workers, and build support structures around vulnerable residents. Already reported $10 million raised, hundreds of thousands of masks, gloves, and gowns. You give us an idea of where we are right now. Are we still seeing donations come in at that rapid rate that we saw 2 weeks ago when last reported?
Well, when we stood up the task force about a month ago, we worked very closely with the state, and we made our mission very clear. We are a private sector group of men and women that are serving the state. And the state has decided what the most immediate needs are. And of course, the first immediate need was to replenish depleted stocks of PPE, personal protective equipment. And we made great strides on that. And I'm happy to say that by the end of next week, we will have fulfilled everything the state had asked us to fulfill. That was step one. Step two is to try to raise money philanthropically in order to pay for this PPE, particularly so that we can have the state donate it to those in the greatest need, the first responders, people in the nonprofit community, people in the medical community. And yes, we raised about $11 million, and I know we're going to raise a lot more over time. The focus right now is to work on testing, and that's really what the last couple of weeks of my life has been like.
And let's talk then specifically about testing. First off, of course, this is in the media a lot. Testing is very hard to come by. What are some of the challenges you're seeing? What are some of the successes we've had thus far?
So what I've learned over the last month about testing is the inhibiting factor to getting people tested is the amount of test kits that we have. Each of the testing labs in the state of Nevada has primarily their own proprietary technology that they use with an outside vendor. Therefore, the lab is dependent upon that outside vendor to supply or allocate test kits to that particular lab. And so in a sense, it is not the limitation of the state, it's the limitation of the outside vendors bringing test kits to those particular labs. And as of right now, I think we've tested only about 25,000 Nevadans. And in order to understand the disease and understand how we could mitigate the spread of this disease, we have to have widespread testing. Not 300-400 tests a day, but tens of thousands of tests today. And I'm working on with the task force a couple projects in order to stand up multiple high throughput labs in Nevada so that we can start testing tens of thousands of people a day. And I hope the first of those labs will be open within a week or two.
And Jim, high throughput lab, what exactly is that? Is that just a quicker turnover of being able to get confirmations and tests results out?
Yeah, so imagine testing is like software. You can have a closed loop system or an open source system. And right now, most of the labs that are run have equipment that can only run tests with that particular test kit going into that machine, which creates that backlog. And everyone's doing their best. All the labs are working as hard as they possibly can, but they're inhibited by the amount of product they can get in to run those machines. An open source platform would allow for multiple test kits to be run on a higher speed machine and be able to do not hundreds a day, but thousands a day.
Now, when we're talking about personal protective equipment, and we're talking about the task force again being more of a leveraging the private sector here, when we're looking at our testing, we're looking at these high put through labs here. Is it the same type of leveraging the private sector in the same ways, or is our strategy changing then?
Well, Nevada is an under-resourced state relative to very wealthy states, bigger states all around us and around the country. And we're in a fight. We're in a fight to acquire PPE. We're in a fight to acquire the proper testing capacity. And it's been an unfair fight because of our resources relative to the federal government and to better resource states. What this task force is trying to do is level the playing field a bit. And we've used the large purchasing procurement arms of many of the gaming companies, Sands, Wynn, MGM. We're using the major force of Nevada Gold, which is the joint venture up north between Barrick and Newmont. We're using NV Energy and many of the large employers to reach out globally to not only get PPE, but not get laid away on the pricing.
Let's talk a little bit about just some of the trends that we have seen. We all are becoming somewhat of data hogs, looking for the trends, looking for positives that we're seeing. And maybe we're starting to see the beginning of that when we look at some of our trends here in the curve flattening, so to speak. Let's talk about testing then. Why is testing so important if we are starting to see a flattening of a curve already?
Well, we have to be cautious. We are information junkies, all of us. And one of the most unsettling aspects of this crisis is the lack of clarity. I know if Nevadans knew when the crisis was going to peak and when we're going to be on the other side, they'd sleep better at night. And we're all trying to find our way. One of the key messages I need to make very clear that epidemics are very, very local. And so, yes, we've seen some very encouraging signs in other parts of the United States. That does not necessarily extrapolate to the rest of the United States. And so what's really critical is to get as much localized data as possible. The only way we're going to have proper data is testing. When you've tested 25,000 people in a state of millions, you can't possibly know from any kind of analytical perspective what the spread of this disease has been, neither incident rates, post-incident rates, or actually understand even immunity, because we haven't even had an antibody test brought throughout Nevada. So testing is the key. It's critical that all of us in Nevada understand that we have to take these precautions very seriously and do not relax any of the protocols that the state and the federal government and the CDC have been very clear about, because we're not only not going to flatten the curve, but if we don't, but we're going to have flare-ups after the curve has been flattened. And so this is a vigilance that is not, we're not going back to normal. There's going to be a new way of living. It'll be a different way of living. We can get through this together, but we have to all be in it together.
And I think that's a great message. This is a long game. This does not end when the curve flattens and we go down to potentially no cases. And that transitions. We only have a minute left. And I want to talk about the recovery aspect of what the task force title is here. You already mentioned testing, and long-term testing is obviously a big part of what the task force wants to do, its role of securing these tests. Where else do you envision the task force is going to go once we see that curve flattened?
So one is I envision that Las Vegas will be, because it's so organized, there's a lot of cooperation going on. That's critical, number one. Number two, we have to continue to test. And it's not a one and done. We'll be testing for the rest of our lives in different levels, because viruses can mutate. There could be other viruses. And we're going to create in Las Vegas an environment where Microsoft wants to have their convention in Las Vegas. And Adobe wants to be in Las Vegas because we can tell them that we've created a network. The network has to be very varied. It's not only testing, it's about protocols. We're understanding the health of our population, and it's going to be about screening. And then it's tracing. So imagine it's the 3 T's, right? It's treatment, it's testing first, treatment, and then tracing. Being able to contact trace to understand if someone has the virus, who he or she has been in contact with. Because of the hospitality business in Nevada, I think we can do that better than any other jurisdiction, and that will lead to the recovery of the hospitality industry, which, because it's 40% of the state budget, is absolutely vital to lead to the recovery of the whole state budget.
Right, right. Well, Jim Murren, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me anytime. Thank you.
Yeah. Even though there is a moratorium on evictions, that doesn't mean you can ignore your bills. To get a deeper understanding of the order, we are joined by Audra Hammernick, President and CEO of Nevada Hand, and Jim Burchold, Directing Attorney of the Consumer Rights Project at the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. Well, Jim, Audra, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it, and you lending your experience and some of your advice for our viewers. It's phenomenal to have you both on the show.
Happy to be here.
And yeah, and you know, I just want to start with Nevada Week has covered affordable housing quite a bit. You know, we've definitely covered the growing pinch that low and moderate Nevadans are feeling, even middle class Nevadans are feeling. Of course, that was before COVID. Now we're dealing with more than 210,000 Nevadans are filing for unemployment, probably more at time of this recording. Jim, I want to start with you. First off, what's the traffic been like at Legal Aid Center? I can only assume you've had a huge influx of calls coming in.
We have. So between our main office and the 2 self-help centers we run, we are fielding about 500 calls a day from very frantic people with all of the questions that you would think, unemployment, foreclosure, eviction, but we're getting questions on, we had a woman call the other day who asked if we could help her locate toilet paper. So it really is running the gamut. The majority of the calls are from really frantic people who are confused about the status of evictions, foreclosures. What do I do if I can't pay my rent?
Yeah. And as you're saying, and also just, you know, general access for just resources as well. Are you seeing any, you know, specific demographic? I mean, typically the Legal Aid Center is dealing with vulnerable populations. I'm assuming that's very well could be a lot broader, and you have a much larger population that might be accessing some of the advice you're giving. Is that true?
I think that is true. I think people are really just so happy when they can reach a live person and ask a question and get somebody to listen to them and give them an answer.
Audra, let's talk a little bit about the property owner and manager side of this. Nevada Hand's in a very interesting position, being really the top affordable housing developer, property manager, and property owner. Let's talk about some of the just specific challenges that property owners and managers are dealing with right now, both you yourself and some of your colleagues.
Sure. Well, Nevada Hand, we have 35 apartment communities in Southern Nevada, and we're serving about 7,600 residents. And you can imagine it's a balancing act right now. We are thinking a lot. Frankly, we're laser focused on making sure that our residents get the services that they need, keeping them housed, and keeping our staff, nearly 300 people, safe and employed. So we're thinking about all those things. And some of the challenges that we're running into are just making sure that we are getting in contact with our residents. If, we're doing the same work, but we're doing the work in a different way. Social distancing is difficult when you're a property manager and you're used to knocking on doors and having people line up in your office every day. Same with resident services. So coming up with strategies to make sure that we're communicating well.
I can only imagine, and let's just talk about the rental piece of this. I mean, are a lot of your tenants able to pay rent, or at least pay part of their rent, or are you having major gaps in the rent that you're getting?
Yeah, our residents that can pay have been, and it's been terrific. Of course, we in our resident communities, mainly our family communities, folks that are relying every day on having a certain number of hours, or just normal jobs. Of course, they're having those job losses and decrease in hours. So we're thinking a lot about how we're helping them streamline rental assistance. And there are many rental assistance agencies throughout the county. And for those folks, we're helping them put their paperwork together, try to streamline it. We're having behind the scenes calls with those agencies to make sure, they're doing the same thing we are, working in a different way too. And so we're trying to make sure that we are emailing applications. And how are you dealing with, normally we would have an eviction notice be documentation for someone not paying the rent. Well, of course, we're not doing that now. So what are other documentation forms that they'll be accepting? And we've had tremendous success working with our community partners. We're also, doing payment plans for people. We're stretching payments over a period of time, and we may be splitting payments. We're just trying to be flexible with folks. We want our residents housed, and we want them living in our buildings, and we want them accessing the benefits that are available to them. So we're working on all those things.
Absolutely, Audra. Jim, let's talk about that. The main goal here being to keep all of our residents housed. Of course, we have state and federal eviction and foreclosure moratoriums in place that have been part of some of the federal packages that have come through, like the CARES Act, but also executive orders by Governor Sisolak. What's some of the legal advice, the key legal advice that you can offer some of our viewers right now if they're running into a problem, if they're a renter?
So what we are really telling renters are, pay attention to the basic stuff you have to do first. Apply for unemployment. Make sure you get your benefits in place. If you haven't updated your information to make sure you get your stimulus payment, do that. Apply for food stamps and really sit down and create a budget and take a hard look at your finances. Create a budget that prioritizes food, medication, rent, utilities, and then look at the other things, because some of those other things might not get paid right now. And that's just the reality of the situation. And if you find that you can't pay your rent, that you're going to have a tough time paying your rent, then talk to your landlord about it. Potentially the landlord would be willing to reduce your rent so that for a temporary period so that you can pay it. You could talk to your landlord about potentially applying your deposits to your rent, to the shortfall on your rent payments for some period of time. And there is also the option of talking to your landlord about a repayment plan. A repayment plan for some people might make sense, for other people it might not. So there's a lot to think about right now.
Yeah, absolutely. On the legal side, let's say that you do have an eviction notice on your door or whatever means that eviction might be coming through. What's some of the advice you have?
So right now, evictions are paused. That means there are no evictions in the state of Nevada right now. So if a landlord is serving a tenant with an eviction notice, that is violating the governor's directive. The Attorney General is being very aggressive about contacting these landlords and making sure that they understand what the requirements are. So if a tenant receives an eviction notice from a landlord, the first thing they should do is call Legal Aid Center, but we would probably have them submit a complaint to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General is following up on those.
And let's talk just about more general resources that the Legal Aid Center is offering as well. I know you're having your own virtual town halls and information centers that people can log into. What other resources do you have there at the Legal Aid Center that our viewership can access?
Well, that's right. We're trying to have a weekly town hall. We also have a toolkit on our website that we put together. We are trying really hard to make sure that that toolkit is up to date. And it covers everything from unemployment to food assistance to rental information and eviction information. It's a lot of information. There are a lot of moving pieces right now. I would really encourage people to access that. They can find that on our website at www.lacsn.org. We also have our phone lines open. We are not taking walk-in appointments, obviously, but anybody can call with a legal question, and we will do our best to find an answer.
Yeah. Jim already mentioned this, Audra. Housing is such a big piece of our budgets here, especially in Nevada and Southern Nevada. For a lot of us, it's over 50%. Prioritizing housing, listening to Jim, is not necessarily the top priority sometimes. What's some of the recommendations that you're specifically giving tenants of how they should budget right now during this crisis?
Yeah. We're really helping folks get utility assistance, access unemployment, and then keeping them up to date on what rental assistance is available to them. We think those three things are key to them having stable housing. And let's face it, it's hard to shelter in place if you're doubling up or you're couch surfing somewhere. So having stable housing is absolutely key. There's 18 units of affordable housing for every 100 needed in Nevada right now. So this is only more pronounced at this moment because of the crisis. So keeping people stably housed is key.
Absolutely. And we're just in a moment, we're going to talk about the future of what housing looks like once the moratoriums are lifted. I want to come back just really quick, though, Jim, and talk about some legal advice you can give property owners and managers. I mean, they are dealing with potential rent income that's not coming in as well. What's some of the advice that you could provide them right now?
Well, so first let's talk about homeowners. So homeowners, the governor's directive does prohibit foreclosures at this time too, and that is going to last until the emergency is lifted. But there also is a level of federal protection available to homeowners. There is not only a federal moratorium on evictions, but the Federal CARES Act also allows homeowners to reach out to their mortgage company, to reach out to their servicer and request a forbearance. And forbearance could be up to 1 year. So, but that is not automatic. Homeowners have to take that initiative and contact their servicing company. And usually it's just a simple form that they fill out on the website. There's no documentation required, but they have to take that action. For landlords, property owners, I would say the same thing. 70% of the properties in the United States have some kind of federally backed mortgage. So it's very likely that multifamily complexes may be entitled to forbearance as well. So if that's an issue for a property owner, reach out and find out that information, but also educate yourself about what the requirements are for evicting tenants and how you have to work with tenants right now.
Yeah, great advice. All right, let's move on to the moratorium ending here. Essential businesses are now open. When we're talking about where we are currently with state and federal policy and legislation right now, Audra, what could the fallout be when we get to that stage where now all of our renters and our mortgage payments are due?
You know, the CARES Act does allow for the forbearance of mortgages for multifamily owners, just like single-family homeowners. So, you know, for us at Nevada Hand, we're doing a series of stress tests thinking about what are things that we can do if we had to kind of postpone paying things. There's also a payroll tax deferral that we could seek. We're very fortunate. We applied for the Paycheck Protection Program through SBA, through the Nevada State Bank, and we've already been funded. So we are thrilled that that was part of the stimulus package. We're very thankful for that. And we think with those type things and with the tenants that can paying, we'll be able to get through. Now, we could talk a lot about wonderful things that the feds could do beyond this when creating new affordable housing, because we would love to do more of that. But so far, stimulus has served us well.
Well, let's talk about maybe some more of the immediate federal relief here. The Congress is looking at CARES Act 2.0. And one of the things that some of the congressional leaders are advocating for is $100 billion towards rental assistance and $75 billion towards mortgage assistance as well. Obviously, funding is going to help. Jim, what are some of the other potential policy shifts we might be able to do, whether it's state or federal, to kind of compensate for what we're going to be dealing with here?
Well, so one idea that's being floated that I'm reading a lot in various articles is the idea of the feds somehow canceling rent payment. That's not going to happen. I don't think there's a legal way that the feds or any other government agency can just say you don't have to pay rent. And that's important for tenants to know. Rent is still accruing. Even though you cannot be evicted right now, rent is still accruing. So legislatively, anything would have to be a direct payment to the tenant or to the landlord. And there are ideas floating around, but everything is totally up in the air right now. I read this morning that the House is proposing a $2,000 payment to anyone affected by COVID. Who knows what's going to happen eventually? But I think there are some things, some states, and mostly at the city level and county level, have actually implemented ordinances that require landlords to offer a payment plan to tenants, sometimes up to a year, to pay back that back rent. I think that is the more likely way legislatively that we'll be headed to make this work.
Jim, do you think we might see that in our state? Can we have an emergency legislative session that might be able to pass policy like that?
I think that's certainly a possibility. I don't know how if it doesn't happen at the local level, at the county level, it's got to happen at the state level, because otherwise, when this ends, when the emergency ends, it's going to be a madhouse. It's going to be tenants who are facing eviction with rent that they can't pay back. So it's going to be ugly for everybody.
Ugly for everybody, and we're out of time. I just want to sum up what advice you'd given right at the beginning here that is extremely important when we're talking whether that policy goes through or not, is tenants talking to your property managers and your landlords talking to your tenants, and the same on the home ownership side with lending. Doing that now is extremely critical. I heard that from both of you, correct?
Absolutely.
Communicate,
communicate.
You got it. Well, Jim, Audra, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, as always, for joining us. If you'd like to access any of the resources that we've discussed today, please visit our website at vegaspbs.org/Nevada-Week. You can also always find us on social media at Nevada Week. Stay healthy and stay strong.